So the competitive season is now officially over for Manchester United, which means we enter that time of the year where we get to start talking about transfers, how different players could fit in at Manchester United. You know, people like you, people like me, will suggest players that United should sign, and we will discuss how they would fit into the current Manchester United 11, how signing an inside forward might help Bruno Fernandes, or it might help Patrick Dorgu. But something that I don't think we do enough of is talking about how signings actually help each other. You know, for example, this week we've been heavily linked to Cunha, but also Mbeumo. But the question is, do they actually work together? Now, first of all, to figure out whether these two actually work together, we do need to talk about their profile, their traits and their characteristics, how they act in a Manchester United team, to figure out whether or not that would actually work. And we're going to start off with similarities. First of all, these two this season have both scored a lot of goals. They've been massive threats in the final third of the pitch, regularly putting the ball into the back of the net. They have also both got a decent number of assists and proved that they can both be creative players in the final third. I think also their ball carrying is something that they both have in common. For me, are both excellent ball carriers, particularly in transitioning. I think they're a massive threat in that area. For Cunha, for example, look at his FB ref report. I mean, the carrying numbers for me are very, very impressive. And Mbeumo has actually had the most carries in the Premier League this season, leading to goals. I think another interesting similarity with these two is the fact that they both take set pieces for their teams. That suggests that they are both players that like to take responsibility, but also players that have good ball striking. We spoke about that yesterday. If you're on set pieces, that tends to suggest you normally get a pretty good connection with the ball because you're trusted on those dead ball specialist situations. Now hang on, I do just need to pause for 1 second, because if we're talking about signing Mbeumo and we're talking about signing Cunha, and they've both got so many similarities, the ball carrying, the set pieces, the goal threat, the assists, is there suddenly a concern that these two are going to clash? You know, often we talk about the positive of two players being similar. It means they'll have synergy, it means they will understand the way that each other play and they can link up and cause chaos in the final third. But there is also a concern. Manchester United are slightly restricted financially this summer. We need to get squad building spot on. So is it worrying if we're signing two players that are sort of exactly the same? Well, it would be. But don't worry, that's not the case. For starters, they literally play on different sides of the pitch. You can see in their heat maps this season, Cunha has been a player that plays more towards the left-hand side, whereas Mbeumo has played on the right-hand side of the Brentford attack. So first of all, there's no clash there positionally. You know, this would suggest they can both play together on the same pitch. But we need to talk more about their habits and the way that they play. Now to do this, I actually went over to the Opta Analyst website. I got loads of good stats, and something that's really stood out to me was the player radars of the two. You can see them here. Both look very, very good initially. You know, they both look like two very capable players, fairly all-rounded players. But I think there's a key difference. Cunha's is more sort of heavily dominating the left-hand side of this radar, whereas Mbeumo's is more dominating the right-hand side of this radar. And that's because they are slightly different players, despite having similar skill sets. You see, Cunha, you can see in his radar, wants to come towards the ball more. He wants to get more touches on the ball. He wants to be more involved in the play and have more passes. Whereas for Mbeumo, it's more about attacking the space, getting in behind and having shots at goal. So whilst they may be similar on the face value of stats, when we actually start to look at their profiles, they are different. They offer different things, and that is incredibly important. When you are trying to build a balanced attack, for example, you know, a front five, it's important to have different profiles. If you've got 5 players here that all want to run in behind the opposition, well then you've got a problem, because who's going to come into these positions and do the linking work? At the same time, if you've got 5 players that want to come towards the ball, then you've got a problem because there's no threat in behind, so the opposition feel comfortable squeezing high up the pitch, and you can sort of get suffocated and pinned back because you don't have an out ball. So to have the ideal attacking balance, what you need is a combination. You need players that are going to stretch in behind this way to drag the opposition back, but you also need players that can then go and operate in this space that has just been created. I think Barcelona are the best examples of this season. They have a variety of profiles in their attack, and I actually did a video on that on the second channel the other day, so make sure to go check it out. Back to United though, and Cunha and Mbeumo, I think they actually complement each other because of the fact that they are slightly different. You know, I think Mbeumo is a player that would want to play on the shoulder more, that would want to get in behind and be that outlet, if you like, in the final third, whereas Cunha likes to get deep. He likes to come into these deeper positions, he likes to pick the ball up, he likes to pass, and he always likes to carry the ball forward as well. And I think we can see clips of the two of them doing these different things, and it's those different things which make them great together. So you can see Mbeumo here playing on the shoulder of the defenders. What he really likes to do is try and get between two defenders. Normally a centre back and a full back. This is the space that he's looking to occupy, and stretch the defence, play on the shoulder. Defenders hate running back towards their own goal. It's an absolute nightmare, to be honest, for defenders. And Mbeumo is always going to take them into those situations. And we've seen this season that he's been a massive goal threat. Again, in this situation here, on the right-hand side, playing on the shoulder. He's not coming towards the ball. He's not worried about unnecessary touches in deep positions to link the play and just stay in the rhythm of the game. He's not too interested in that. And Mbeumo is all about ruthless efficiency, wanting to play in the final third and in the danger areas. Again, between two defenders, getting into these positions where he can score goals. And he's been a massive threat all season long in this particular space here. Constantly, time and time again, getting in behind the opposition defence and, like I said, scoring some very good goals. Now, let's say Mbeumo was to sign for Manchester United and do those things, play on the last line and get in behind. Well, that could be huge for Cunha, right? That could have a hugely positive effect on him. Because what happens when you're Mbeumo and you start running in behind and causing problems and scoring goals like we've just seen, is the opposition start to respect you. They go, you're too good. What we need to do is we need to mark you closer. We need to give you less space to work with. And what defences will often do is drop off a little bit deeper. If Mbeumo is constantly attacking the space in behind and being dangerous, the obvious defensive solution is to reduce the space in behind by dropping off a little bit deeper. But the second a defensive line drops off deeper, then more space is created in the middle of the pitch. And this is where someone like Cunha can then thrive. He can pick the ball up and create chaos. Controlled chaos, I would say. But chaos in these positions with his ball carrying, his ability to commit defenders, but really his ability to drive into the open space that the runners are going to create. And the reason I believe this so strongly is because it's literally what he's been doing all season long. Dropping deep into these sorts of positions. Maybe this one's a little bit too deep. I'd like to see him a little bit higher. But picking up the ball in deep areas and driving forward. And the reason he's been able to do that is because Wolves have put runners around him. And we'll discuss this a little bit more in another video in a few days' time. But Wolves have had these runners, and that creates the space for Cunha to drive into in these positions. And again, the important thing is, when Cunha's here, when he's got runners around him, it literally drags the opposition defence deeper. And Mbeumo could have a very similar impact. It forces the opposition defence just to back off a yard. But if they're backing off a yard, then Cunha has more space. And Cunha with more space is a dangerous, dangerous man because he's just deadly with the way that he carries the ball. He's ruthless, like I've said a few times. He's a bit of a killer in the way that he'll just pick the ball up, attack the space created by runners, and just drive at these teams. Link play as well with wing-backs and central midfielders, of course. But again, it's about those killer instincts in the final third and attacking the space. Now, I think the other thing that we should discuss in terms of these two maybe being different but complementing each other is the heat maps that we saw earlier. You see, initially it looks like Mbeumo is a right-sided player, Cunha is a left-sided player. But I would actually say Cunha is getting a lot of involvement in the middle of the pitch. And again, that could work quite nicely. If Mbeumo is someone who perhaps in moments will look to peel a little bit wider, that could potentially allow Cunha at times to go and play as sort of a second striker up front. You know, if Mbeumo was always playing really central, close to the striker, then Cunha may not have the room to do the same. Whereas if Mbeumo is moving a little bit wider into these zones here, like his heat map suggests, then maybe that can create more room for Cunha to move into. And honestly, all in all, I think the profiles complement each other really nicely because for me, it's always been a basic of football. Get a runner and get someone that comes towards the ball. It's a really nice balance because the opposition gets stuck in between. Do you go with the runner or do you go with the player towards the ball? It's very difficult. You end up sort of caught in between. So I do think these two can work together quite nicely. However, as always, perfect signings don't tend to exist in football, particularly a pair of perfect signings. It's quite rare that a pair literally perfectly suit each other. And I would say that continues. I don't think this is perfect. For example, these two don't necessarily have loads of experience in breaking down low blocks. They've both played in quite transitional teams for the past few seasons. So there would be question marks there over their ability to break down deep defences. So that is one area where I would perhaps be just a little bit concerned. And the other concern I would have, and this is a bit of a rogue one that no one else, as far as I've seen, has picked up on, is the defensive impact it has on the team. And I'm not talking about the work rate of either of them or anything like that, but the structure that it leaves Manchester United in. You see, what we've seen for large parts of this season is a Manchester United side that defends in a back five, then plays in a 4, and then a 1. And a lot of the criticism has been, this is too passive. But don't worry, everyone has said, when we sign athletic players, we'll be able to press higher. And there's been a lot of talk of United shifting into more of a back 4 shape to press the opposition. Because if you have a back 4 instead of a back 5, you literally have more players further forward, right? So you can engage higher, you can apply more pressure. The problem for me is it's quite difficult to shift into a defensive back four with these two in the same team. And the reason for that is because of our other players that we've already got. Now, just hear me out on this one. This is me kind of thinking out loud a little bit, right? Rather than this being pre-planned, but it comes to my mind recently. Cunha, for me, is a player that defensively, you know, let's say you're in a 4-4-2. I don't think you want Cunha defending on the touchline because I don't think he's got the work rate for that. So I think most would say you put him up front with your striker. When you're defending in a 4-4-2, you put Cunha up front. That means Mbeumo is going to play as a right-sided midfielder. So that means Mbeumo is going to drop into this deeper position here. The problem is, that means the shift across looks a little bit like that. And Ahmad ends up as a right back, which doesn't quite sit right with me. Now, we could try and shift this the other way around. For example, we could move Ahmad higher to right mid, and Mbeumo could go up front, Højlund across, Cunha drops in. And perhaps this makes a little bit more sense, doing it like that. But then I would question the defensive efficiency of Dorgu and Cunha together. So this isn't a massive problem because we don't know exactly what Amorim has got planned. I just thought I would kind of throw this out there because it is something that has been on my mind. To me, these signings would sort of suggest that defensively it will continue to be a back five, and I think when we've used that shape, we've looked a bit too easy to play against at times. So that is just a slight concern. Now, like I said, that potentially isn't a massive deal. It is just something that has crossed my mind and something I've thought about when people have been talking about their ideal teams for United next season. And for me, perhaps the ideal solution is a little bit different to what Amorim is thinking. I don't know. Realistically, he's probably right. He's Manchester United manager. But I thought it was just worth raising the point. Apart from that, I think these two look really good together. Again, I like the idea, particularly in transitions, of one running, one coming towards. I think they can work together very nicely. Slight concerns against a low block, the pure creativity. But I think players like Bruno Fernandes, Ahmad would allow you to find a way around that. So all in all, do I think Cunha and Mbeumo would work in the same front three as each other? On the ball, yes. Yes. Yes, I think these two would work together very, very nicely. So should Manchester United sign the two of them, you're getting two Premier League proven players who can complement each other in attacking situations. It sounds ideal. It sounds ideal. Of course, we don't know if this is going to happen. Cunha looks very, very likely. And Mbeumo, slightly less so, although the rumours are sticking. They don't seem to be going anywhere, so perhaps there is something in it. So it's one to keep an eye on for now. There's not too much else to talk about right now because now it is a bit of a waiting game. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to stop the video there and we're going to wait. Thank you guys very much for watching. Hope you have enjoyed this video. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.